The parking lot was nearly empty that night, just rows of yellow streetlights casting long shadows across cracked asphalt. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, and I was walking toward my car after a 14-hour shift at the warehouse. My feet ached, my back screamed. All I wanted was to get home, collapse onto the couch, and forget that I existed for a few hours. Then I heard it, a sound that made me stop dead in my tracks. Crying. Not the kind of crying you hear in movies, dramatic and loud. This was different. Quiet, desperate, the kind of crying that comes from someone who doesn't want to be heard. I turned toward the sound. There, between a rusted Honda and a black SUV, a woman sat on the ground, her back pressed against the car door, her knees pulled up to her chest, her face buried in her hands. She was maybe in her late 50s, wearing a nurse's uniform, the light blue kind with flowers printed along the collar. Her shoes were off, sitting beside her like she'd given up on wearing them. For a moment I hesitated. I'm not proud of that, but it's the truth. It was late, I was tired. And in a world where minding your own business feels safer than getting involved, part of me wanted to just keep walking, but I couldn't. Because 3 years earlier, I had been the one sitting in a parking lot at midnight, crying so hard I thought my chest would cave in. And no one stopped. Not one person. I walked over slowly, keeping my distance so I wouldn't startle her. "Excuse me, are you okay?" She looked up. Her eyes were red, swollen, mascara streaked down her cheeks in dark rivers. She stared at me for a long moment like she was trying to decide whether I was real or just another cruel trick her mind was playing on her. "I'm fine," she whispered. But her voice cracked on the word fine, and we both knew it was a lie. I crouched down a few feet away, my knees protesting. "You don't look fine." No judgment, just an observation. She let out a bitter laugh, the kind that sounds more like a sob. "No, I'm not fine. I'm the furthest thing from fine." Her name was Margaret Calloway. And what happened in that parking lot over the next 20 minutes would completely destroy everything I thought I understood about justice, family, and what it means to do the right thing. If you want the full truth, hit like so this story reaches more people. Margaret wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the mascara even more. I sat down on the asphalt beside her, ignoring the cold seeping through my jeans. We didn't speak for a minute. Sometimes silence is the only language that makes sense. Finally, she broke it. "I just got fired," Margaret said. Her voice was flat, empty, like all the fight had drained out of her. "After 28 years. 28 years of overnight shifts, double shifts, covering for people who called in sick. 28 years of holding patients' hands when they were scared, of missing my own daughter's birthday parties because someone had to work Christmas Eve." I looked at her. 28 years, what happened? Margaret's jaw tight. She stared straight ahead at nothing. "They said I stole medication. Fentanyl, 12 vials over 3 months." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Did you?" I asked, not accusing, just asking. She turned to me, and for the first time I saw something other than sadness in her eyes. I saw rage. "No, I have never stolen a single thing in my entire life. Not a pen, not a bandage, nothing. But they have security footage, logs, everything pointing to me. And I can't prove I didn't do it. That's the part that's killing me. I can't prove my innocence." Her hands were shaking. "Margaret told me everything right there on that cold parking lot floor. She worked at Mercy General Hospital, the big one on Highland Avenue. For nearly 3 decades, she had been a night shift nurse in the ICU, the kind of nurse patients remembered years later, the one who made them feel like they mattered. But 6 months ago, things started changing. A new hospital administrator arrived, a man named Douglas Brenner, 40 years old, MBA from somewhere expensive, zero medical experience. He came in talking about efficiency, cost-cutting, restructuring. Within 2 months, he had fired 15% of the nursing staff. The ones who remained were expected to do the work of 2 people for the same pay. Margaret was one of the senior nurses, which meant she made $34 an hour while newer nurses made $22. She had seniority, pension benefits, protections that made her expensive to keep. 3 months ago, the medication discrepancies started, small amounts at first. A vial here, 2 vials there, all from the ICU, all logged under Margaret's access code. She reported it immediately, thinking it was a system error. But instead of investigating, Douglas Brenner called her into his office. He didn't accuse her directly, he just asked questions, uncomfortable questions. Had she been under any financial stress? Was everything okay at home? Did she understand the legal consequences of medication theft? Margaret left that meeting feeling like she'd been marked. Like someone had painted a target on her back and was just waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. Tonight, they pulled it. Douglas called Margaret into his office at 10:30 p.m. right in the middle of her shift. Human Resources was there. A woman named Patricia Chen, late 30s, holding a manila folder like it contained evidence of murder. The security director sat in the corner, arms crossed, face blank. They showed her the footage. Grainy black and white timestamp in the corner. Margaret entering the medication room. Margaret scanning her badge. Margaret's hands reaching toward the cabinet where fentanyl was stored. The camera angle made it impossible to see exactly what she was taking, but the logs showed fentanyl missing at those exact times. 12 incidents over 3 months, all documented. Margaret tried to explain. She accessed that cabinet dozens of times per shift. She was treating patients in critical condition. Of course, her badge showed up in the logs, but they had already made up their minds. Douglas leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like some corporate priest delivering judgment. Margaret, we want to handle this quietly, for your sake and the hospital's reputation. If you resign tonight, effective immediately, we won't file criminal charges. You walk away, no police, no trial, no prison. But if you refuse, we turn everything over to the authorities tomorrow morning. She stared at him. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice, Douglas replied. His voice was smooth, practiced, the tone of someone who had done this before. Sign the resignation. Admit no wrongdoing publicly, and this ends here. Margaret felt the walls closing in. She was 57 years old. If she got arrested, even if charges were eventually dropped, her nursing license would be suspended during the investigation. She would never work in healthcare again. No hospital would touch her. But if she resigned, if she just walked away quietly, she could at least try to find work somewhere else. Maybe in a clinic, maybe in home care. It would be starting over, but it would be something. Except Margaret knew the truth. If she signed that paper, she was admitting guilt. And 28 years of her life, every patient she had comforted, every life she had helped save, would be reduced to one thing: thief. She looked Douglas Brenner directly in the eyes. I didn't steal anything. Then you leave me no choice, he replied. He nodded to Patricia, who opened another folder and slid a document across the desk. We'll be contacting the police in the morning. Margaret was escorted out of the building by security, not allowed to go back to her locker, not allowed to say goodbye to the other nurses. Walked out like a criminal in front of patients, families, people she had worked beside for years. And that's how she ended up in a parking lot at midnight, sitting on the ground in her scrubs, crying so hard she couldn't breathe, because she had just lost everything. And the man who destroyed her was going to get away with it. Comment justice if you believe she deserved the truth to come out. I sat there on that cold asphalt, watching Margaret's shoulders shake with silent sobs, and something inside me snapped. Not anger exactly, something colder, more focused. I've seen this before, I said quietly. Margaret looked up, confused. What, people in power crushing people who can't fight back? I've seen it, I've lived it, and I'm tired of watching it happen. She wiped her eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying I believe you, and I'm saying we're going to prove it. Margaret let out a hollow laugh. Prove it. With what? They have everything. Security footage, access logs, timestamps. I'm just a nurse. He's the hospital administrator. I looked at her. My name is Ryan Torres. I'm 36 years old. I load trucks at a distribution warehouse 60 hours a week. Before that, I was an investigative journalist. I worked for the Chicago Tribune for 8 years, covered corruption cases, corporate fraud, the kind of stories that get people fired and sometimes arrested. Margaret stared at me. Why aren't you doing that anymore? Because I published a story about a pharmaceutical company bribing doctors to overprescribe opioids. The story was true, every word, but they had better lawyers than my newspaper had backbone. I got sued. The Tribune settled and threw me under the bus. I was blacklisted. No major publication would touch me. So I moved to Memphis, started over, and tried to forget I ever had a career that mattered. But here's the thing, Margaret. I still know how to investigate. I still know how to find the truth buried under lies. And everything you just told me smells wrong. Margaret's eyes widened slightly. Wrong how? Douglas Brenner wants you gone. You're expensive. You have seniority. But he can't just fire you without cause, not with your tenure and union protections. So instead, he frames you for theft, forces you to resign, and replaces you with someone cheaper. It's not about medication, it's about money. But the footage, Margaret whispered. How do you explain that? I don't know yet, I replied, but I will. Security cameras can be edited, access logs can be manipulated, timestamps can be altered. If someone wanted to frame you badly enough, they would need 3 things: your access code, knowledge of your schedule, and control over the security system. Margaret went very still. Douglas hired his own nephew as the new IT security director 4 months ago. Right before the discrepancies started, there it was, the thread that unravels everything. I stood up, offering Margaret my hand. She took it, pulling herself to her feet. Her nurse's shoes stayed on the ground for a moment before she bent down and picked them up. "What do you want me to do?" Margaret asked. Her voice was different now, steadier. "I need you to not resign, not yet. File for unemployment, document everything. And meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the coffee shop on Union Avenue. We're going to take Douglas Brenner down." The next day, I walked into that coffee shop carrying a laptop that had seen better days and a notebook filled with questions that needed answers. Margaret was already there, sitting in the back corner booth, an untouched cup of coffee going cold in front of her. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all. I probably looked the same. I had stayed up until 4 a.m. researching Douglas Brenner, and what I found made my journalist instincts scream. Douglas Brenner, 40 years old, MBA from Kellogg. Before Mercy General, he had worked at 3 other hospitals: St. Luke's in Ohio, Presbyterian in Arizona, County General in Florida. I pulled up my laptop and turned it toward Margaret. "Look at this. At every single hospital, the same pattern. He arrives. Within 6 months, senior staff members get accused of policy violations or theft. They resign quietly. He replaces them with cheaper, younger workers. Profit margins go up. He gets a bonus and moves to the next hospital." Margaret leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen. "This is a system. This is what he does." "Exactly," I said. "You're not the first, you're just the latest. But here's what's different. At those other hospitals, no one fought back. Everyone just resigned and disappeared. You didn't." Her jaw tight. "So what do? We prove he's framing you. And to do that, we need to get inside the hospital's security system." Margaret shook her head. "That's impossible. Everything's digital now. Encrypted. Only IT has access." I smiled. "You said Douglas hired his nephew as IT security director. What's his name?" Margaret thought for a moment. Kevin Brenner. 25, maybe 26 years old. Just graduated from some community college. No real experience. Douglas gave him the job. I opened a new tab and started searching. Kevin Brenner, Memphis. Within 30 seconds, I had his social media profiles. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all public, all full of photos of him at bars, at clubs, posting about video games and complaining about work. One post from 2 months ago caught my eye. Kevin had written, "My uncle makes me do the dumbest stuff. Like I'm supposed to be IT security, but half my job is just moving files around and changing timestamps. Is this even legal?" The post had 3 likes and no comments. It had been up for 9 weeks. I turned the laptop toward Margaret again. "Read that." She read it. Her hand went to her mouth. He admitted it, not explicitly but close enough. I screenshotted the post, saved it, backed it up to 3 different drives. "This isn't proof," I said, "but it's a crack, and cracks lead to collapses." Over the next week, I did what I used to do best. I investigated. I called former employees from the other hospitals where Douglas had worked. It took 47 phone calls, but I finally found someone willing to talk. Her name was Linda Garrison, a former ICU nurse from St. Luke's in Ohio. She had been accused of the exact same thing as Margaret: medication theft, forced resignation, career destroyed. Type yes if you want to see all targets hit at once. Linda's voice shook when she spoke to me over the phone. She had spent 4 years trying to rebuild her life after Douglas destroyed it. She worked at a pharmacy now, making half what she used to earn, still carrying the shame of an accusation she couldn't disprove. "He told me the same thing," Linda said. "Resign quietly or face criminal charges." I was terrified. I had 2 kids in college. I couldn't risk going to jail, so I signed the paper and walked away. But I knew I didn't steal anything. "I knew it. Did you ever suspect how he did it?" I asked. Linda was quiet for a moment. "There was this IT guy, young kid, always following Douglas around like a puppy. I saw him in the medication room once messing with the computer system. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was running a security update. But it was 2 a.m. Who runs updates in the middle of a shift?" I felt my pulse quicken. "Do you remember his name?" Linda thought hard. "Something with a B. Brandon?" "No. Brenner. His last name was Brenner, same as Douglas. I think they were related." That was the confirmation I needed. Douglas had been running this scam for years, using family members in IT positions to manipulate security footage and access logs, framing experienced nurses to cut costs and boost profits. It was elegant, cruel, and completely illegal. I met with Margaret again the next day. This time I brought a plan. "We can't just go to the hospital board with accusations," I explained. "Douglas has been doing this too long. He's protected. We need hard evidence." Video documents something that proves he's manipulating the system. Margaret nodded. How do we get that? We set a trap. I need you to go back to the hospital, not as an employee, but as a visitor. You still have friends there, right? Nurses you trust. She nodded slowly. A few. Good. I need you to talk to them. Find out if anyone else has been accused recently or if anyone's heard rumors about more firings. Meanwhile, I'm going to approach Kevin. Margaret's eyes went wide. Douglas's nephew. Are you insane? Maybe, I said. But Kevin's young, inexperienced, and based on his social media, he's not happy working for his uncle. People like that talk when they feel safe. I just need to make him feel safe. Over the next 3 days, Margaret reconnected with her former coworkers. What she discovered made both of us sick. 2 more nurses had been called into Douglas's office in the past month. Both were senior staff, both were accused of policy violations. Both were given the same choice: resign or face consequences. The pattern was undeniable. Meanwhile, I found Kevin at a bar on Beale Street, the kind of place where tourists get drunk and locals watch. He was sitting alone, scrolling through his phone, drinking something expensive. I sat down next to him. Kevin Brenner looked up from his phone, confused. Do I know you? No, I said, but I know what your uncle is making you do, and I know you hate it. His face went pale. He glanced around the bar like he was checking for witnesses. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I replied calmly. You posted about it 2 months ago, changing timestamps. Moving files around, you asked if it was even legal. Kevin's hand tightened around his glass. Who are you? My name is Ryan Torres. I'm helping a nurse named Margaret Calloway. Your uncle framed her for stealing medication, and I think you know exactly how he did it. Kevin looked down at his drink. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly he spoke. I didn't want to do it. He's family. He got me the job. He said it was just paperwork, administrative stuff. But then he started asking me to edit security footage to change access logs. He said it was for insurance purposes to protect the hospital from liability. I believed him at first. When did you stop believing him? I asked. Kevin's voice cracked. When I saw Margaret Calloway escorted out by security. I've met her. She brought me soup once when I was working a double shift and forgot to eat. She's a good person, and I helped destroy her. He looked at me, tears forming in his eyes. I'm not a bad person, I know, I said, but right now you have a choice. You can keep helping your uncle destroy innocent people, or you can do the right thing. Kevin wiped his face. What do you want me to do? I need the original files, the unedited security footage, the real access logs, anything that proves Margaret didn't steal that medication. Share this video so communities understand what was hiding. Kevin met me 2 days later in that same coffee shop where Margaret and I had first planned this. He brought a USB drive containing everything. Unedited footage showing Margaret entering the medication room, treating patients, and leaving without taking anything. Edited footage showing the same timestamps but with frames removed and spliced together to make it look suspicious. Access logs with Margaret's code, but the IP address showed the entries came from Kevin's computer, not the medication room terminal. Douglas had been logging in as Margaret remotely, creating a false digital trail. We had him. Margaret, Kevin, and I walked into the office of the Tennessee Board of Health 3 days later. We brought the evidence, Linda's testimony from Ohio, and documentation from 2 other hospitals showing the same pattern. The investigation took 6 weeks. Douglas Brenner was arrested on charges of fraud, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and banned from ever working in healthcare administration again. Margaret got her job back with full back pay and a public apology from Mercy General Hospital. Kevin received immunity in exchange for his testimony. He quit working in IT and went back to school to become a paramedic. As for me, that story I wrote about the case got picked up by ProPublica. It went viral, 3 million views in the first week. Other nurses from across the country came forward with similar stories. I got my career back. But more importantly, Margaret got her life back. All because on one cold October night I stopped in a parking lot and asked a crying woman if she was okay. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness changes everything. If this shocked you, comment believe below. And if you think Margaret deserved justice, hit subscribe because stories like this matter. Every voice matters. Every person sitting alone in a parking lot deserves someone to stop and care. Be that person. The world needs more of us.